Welcome back to Quarter Sports. Today's video, we're going to talk about Oklahoma and Texas deciding that they want to leave the Big 12 and enter the SEC. I'm sure if you're a college football fan or just a sports fan in general, your social media timelines have been filled with this stuff today and yesterday as well, since it became public that Texas and Oklahoma want to secede the Big 12 and come to the SEC. We're going to go over kind of why they want to do that and kind of logistically what the plan is for that and how it could shape college football in the future. So, why Oklahoma and Texas want to join the SEC is pretty easy. It's money. Last year, the SEC made $720 million revenue per USA Today and paid out about $45 million to each school, while the Big 12 only made $439 million and only paid out about $38 million to each school. So the big deal here is money, and adding two big powerhouses like Oklahoma and Texas is only going to add much more revenue to the SEC and increase that payout to each team. The SEC also just agreed to a $3 billion contract deal with Disney to show their games in the future, which is going to make $300 million a year. So Texas and Oklahoma see the writing on the wall with the money-wise, and just they want to get in and make money. That's the name of the game. To my surprise, I didn't know this, but in 2010, Oklahoma and Texas was linked to the Pac-10, along with A&M, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Colorado. They would have made the Pac-16. I was not aware of that. That would have been a huge move during that time. But eventually the deal fell through. A&M and Missouri left for the SEC. And since then, Missouri and A&M have made much more money. They brought in last year in the COVID-19 season, the SEC divided up $657 million in revenue, much more than anybody else. They ran through the COVID-19 season very well, paid their teams really well. So it's obvious Texas and Oklahoma just want to be in a conference like that. Up next with the Big 12, it says they're looking to look at UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati, as well as BYU joining the league. I think that's just kind of they're just trying to keep their league alive. I think losing Texas and Oklahoma would be killer to that league, and I could see the league eventually folding and making up a four conference league in the college football with the Pac-10, ACC, Big Ten, and SEC. We're going to look at a little logistically how the pods would be set up. That's how they are going to do the SEC if they do add Texas and Oklahoma. This first pod here, it's got Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina in pod 1, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Vanderbilt in pod 2, Arkansas, LSU, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss in pod 3, and Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, and A&M in pod 4. I think the first thing that jumps out with this one is just pod 4 being all former Big 12 teams. A lot of bad blood there between all those four. I don't hate this idea. I think it could work. The scheduling wise, I believe they said that it would be you'd play each of your three teams in your pod each year, and then you would play two from each pod and make a total of 9 conference games for the year, and then rotate those each year. And I kind of like that idea. I think that it helps you play more people more often. And I know a big deal is not playing some of the other teams from the other division in the SEC was a big another pod I've seen, this one seems more likely to happen, is the one you see here. It's Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas in one, A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. This one I think makes the most sense, just logistically and travel-wise. A&M playing LSU and Ole Miss and Mississippi State, probably the most outlandish one there, but I think they could work. Arkansas playing Oklahoma and Texas again, as well as already having a Missouri rivalry going on right now. I think rekindling that rivalry with Texas and Oklahoma would be huge. Former Southwestern Conference rival with Texas. Keeping Auburn and Alabama together, obviously that's a big money game. Up until now, it's been the biggest game in the SEC every year, and always a national title influences there. So logistically, I think this one fits, this one works the best, in my opinion. Um, in order to get into the league, Oklahoma and Texas, they're first going to have to leave the Big 12, and that could be a problem. In 2025 is when their media deal is set to end. If they break that media deal before then, I believe they have to pay between the two of them $76 million, which for a big school like that, it might not be a whole lot. They'll get their lawyers involved, and the cost will go down. I think if Texas and Oklahoma really want in, they're going to get in. I think it's just a foregone conclusion at this point. I think now it's just really how does college football uh, react and what happens in there. And honestly, for me, I think the Big 12 eventually folds. I think the Big 12 will eventually fold, and teams will go into the ACC, the Pac-10, and the Big 10, and have four-team super conference. And I just think that's kind of where the league's going. That's more similar to the pro sports. And with the way things are moving in college football and college sports, that's kind of where everything's headed. And I wouldn't be mad at that with the 12-team playoff coming in. I think that makes things a little easier because obviously your four winners from those conferences are going to get in, and then I'd expect the next two, and then you'd have your mini conferences full of mid majors and teams like that. But I think for a competition standpoint, I think it's a no-brainer. SEC has been the dominant conference in college football for a while, and adding powers like Oklahoma and Texas hasn't been great recently, but the money they have and the following they have, it's just a no-brainer to let them in. I think that the SEC will vote to let them in. It's going to take 11 out of 14 schools to say yes, and obviously A&M being the one foregone no that they will say they don't want Texas or Oklahoma in. But I think for everyone else, it's going to be a yes. I mean, you got to think Alabama, they're not worried about Oklahoma or Texas coming in. Florida, Georgia, they want the competition. Arkansas would love to rekindle the rivalry. I just think it's a great idea all around. So basically, I think Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC is going to happen. I think it's the first domino to fall and what will be a very hectic, changing time for college football. But I think from a competitor and a fan perspective that this is a good thing for college sports. Competitiveness and competitive leagues, it can do nothing but help with sports in general, not only football, but basketball, baseball, softball. Um, so, yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, I believe, will be in the SEC, and we'll eventually see a four-team super conference in college football. This has been another video for Quarter to Quarter Sports. Be sure to check out our Twitter and go follow my Twitter at _Drake Henderson. Thanks for watching, guys.